What's up, golf friends? This is Jim Colton, and this is the Driven Golf Podcast. I'm here with the super producer, Joseph K. What's going on, Joseph?
Hey, Jim. What's happening? Are we live?
Yeah, we are live. This is episode 22. It's dropping Tuesday, July 16th. This is a very special episode because this is going to launch the week before what event?
That would be the U.S. Junior, Jim.
Oh, yeah.
At Oakland Hills. So let's get to Detroit. This is going to be great. Can't wait.
The Super Bowl of junior golf, the U.S. Junior, the big daddy of them all. These USGA events are just tremendous. They're the be-all, end-all. We were fortunate enough to spend time at Oakland Hills. Shout out to my friend Matt for having us out there last weekend. What was your take spending time up there?
Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed the property. It was instantly vaulted into a top 10 golf course for me.
Top 5, probably.
Yeah, it was. Matt was a great host. I know you just shouted him out, but I can't thank Matt enough, man. He really got us around there pretty good and had some good history lessons for us. The golf course is in great shape. I mean, they've got the rough up. It's going to be a great test of golf, so I can't wait to get there. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, so Oakland Hills has a very rich history. You know, it's Ben Hogan called it the Monster back when he won the U.S. Open in the 50s. And more recently, it hosted the U.S. Amateur in 2016, but it's since been renovated by Gil Hanse. So a lot more width, I think, than it existed before. Took out some of the Reese Jones and brought in some of the original Donald Ross kind of strategy and green, enlarging the greens. Greens are just absolutely fantastic. I think it'll be a really good test for the best juniors, and I really think the cream will rise to the top because you really can't fake your way around there. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
We really had this episode kind of centered around match play. We at Angle of Attack at the end of this episode, we talked to Andrew Lewis around angle of attack around match play mindset. Hopefully to help people if they're in the U.S. Junior or preparing for potentially a match play tournament or future U.S. Juniors. Hopefully they get a lot out of that. Some really good tips there as well. One other thing I wanted to ask you, did you use the promo code for the yardage book you have at Oakland Hills?
Absolutely. I got both yardage books, so the North and the South course from Straka. Used code DRIVEN. They came in handy. So yeah,
because your player didn't bring his. So.
yeah. Leave it to the super looper to always be prepared. So I had those things ordered 2 months in advance. So yeah.
No, but it was great. Like you were able to take notes. You were able to converse with the other caddies there and some members that have been there for a while. So hopefully that gives us a leg up going into the competition. But it should be an awesome time. Whoever comes out of there is going to be a deserving champion. There's no doubt about that. I'm really excited to see that. Speaking of match play, I did want to give a shout out to Frisco, Texas' very own Davis Ovard. He won the North and South Amateur a couple weeks ago at Pinehurst Resort. Made it through 5 rounds of match play. I think he was in the playoff to get one of the last spots after stroke play and made it all the way through match play. Beat hometown hero Jackson Van Paris, who's one of the top 10 amateurs in the world in the finals. The one observation there, I mean, if anyone tracked the scores, and I think this will be true in the U.S. Junior as well, and you see it in the U.S. Amateur, it is very much a test of endurance. A lot of the days as you get down to 8-4, North and South, the semifinals and the finals are in the same day. U.S. Junior's a 36-hole final. It is a bit of a war of attrition. It's sometimes it's not exactly the highest standard of play that those guys are used to. But, the grittiness that Andrew talks about later in this episode really comes through kind of gutting out pars, parring your opponent to death. It can go a long way. And Davis did a great job, kind of standing tall there at the end. So congrats to him. Yeah, speaking of Jackson Van Paris and Davis, I think will be relevant for them as well. But Jackson Van Paris is going to be a senior at Vanderbilt. And here in a week or two, you will see him published at the first PGA Tour University standings for the class of 2025. And in this episode, we talked to Justin Bardgett, who's a former college golf coach and now works for the PGA Tour as a director in player relations for what they call the PGA Tour Pathways. So all the sort of the development tours and the PGA Tour University, all the pathways that lead into getting your PGA Tour card. He works closely with college coaches, college players, informing them and instructing them how to navigate that. And then also once they get sort of in the professional circuit, make sure that transition is as smooth as possible. So did you get anything out of that episode or that interview with Justin?
Yeah, I really liked his background. It really intrigued me, and I think it applies to what we've been talking about lately is these juniors are thinking about where they want to go to school, where they want to spend the next 4 years. And he kind of touched on what the keys to success are to him, and the listeners will hear in this episode that, you really got to pay attention to the ones that are going to be joining you. I think that's a good little nugget that he talked about. Also highlighting his coach. It makes a big difference. So I won't go too far there into giving away the episode, but I thought that was really interesting to me. I didn't really think about that as much as, some of the other stuff that factors into choosing a school. So I thought that was great.
Yeah. And I would say, I was talking to Justin a little bit before we started recording. And this is really one of the main purposes, I think, of our podcast is to interview and talk to people just surrounding the game. And, Justin's, if you had asked, I think even Justin said, like, if you asked him a year and a half ago whether he'd be working for the PGA Tour, he decided he'd be on a coaching path. And I think if you asked him maybe 5-6 years prior to that, he probably thought, I'm just going to chase my way to the PGA Tour. Like, it is great to chase this dream of being a professional golfer and seeing how good you can be. And hopefully we do a great job of providing resources to help kids. That's really why we exist, I think. But then also be open to the opportunities and the possibilities that might come out of that. And I think the one thing, if just listening to Justin and just understanding his background and what he brings to the table, like, he is giving back to the game in just tremendous ways, in ways that he probably didn't even imagine. But I think where he is now, if he were to look back and reflect, he would realize that he's really in the perfect position of, like, all the experiences that he's had in order to, and the ability to give back to the game in a really meaningful way. I think it's a really special thing to see.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're going to look back on this PGA Tour U and PGA Tour Accelerated U in a few years and kind of isolate this year as really like the catalyst that got everybody going. I mean, look at Luke Clanton, for example. I mean, he's 4 starts on the PGA Tour, 4 cuts, 2 top 10s. I mean, we talk about it every week. This is not going anywhere, Jim.
I wonder, there's a question out there. Is Luke Clanton just going to top 10 his way all the way to does he need to be emailing his professors and say, hey, I may not be there in August? It just keeps this train rolling. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's great to see.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. And like you said, Gordon Sargent is got his PGA Tour card early. Folks maybe aware Jackson Coyvin's like right on the cusp. Luke, we were just talking about it, Luke Clanton earlier, and I think he's got 10 PGA Tour accelerated points, so he's like halfway there as well. So you may have 3 in a row, and what was really meant to be sort of a once in a generational type thing, these kids just keep getting better and better and better. So this is just an indication of that. And in his class, I think the 2022 class, graduating class, is just super strong. One other thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap up. So we talked about resources and our wanting to help junior golfers develop. So one of the things we've done recently with your help, Joseph, is we've launched a spin-off podcast. So we took the Angle of Attack episodes. I know you did some work on them, and we basically put season 1 up. So you can see the Angle of Attack episodes. Right now they're on Spotify. Hopefully to add them to Apple pretty soon. But I think it's really cool that you really saw that there was a need to to spin that up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're just looking for, the keys to success to improve your game, and you just want to take that in bite-sized pieces, I encourage you to go listen to what Andrew has to say. He's got some great insights on how to improve your game as a junior, amateur, or anybody really. So I'm glad to put that together.
No, I appreciate that. And we've got aspirations. Like, look, we've got day jobs, and we're trying to build this thing out over time. But you can also find them. We have a website now. It's driven.golf, drvn.golf. So that is sort of a broader sort of website and brand where we're doing deeper dives, doing analytics like blog posts. I've got information on junior golf rankings, cracked the code on Wagger. One of the things related to Luke Clanton, I'm actually tracking the progress of basically college players, top college freshmen all the way through their college career and on to pros, going back to like the Jordan Spieth, JT era. So you could see sort of what's a natural progression of players as they go through time, and some go up rapidly, some fall off, but that's just the nature of the beast. But it gives you a sense of like, if you've got a junior that's sort of on this path, like, are they on the right trajectory? Do they need to maybe catch up to their peers in order to get where they want to get to? So hopefully that's helpful information, and I hope to have that out as a blog post pretty soon. So just check that out. If we get this thing rolling, we'll maybe have a newsletter down the road, and we're hoping to add some more tools just to help junior golfers, parents of junior golfers, and I think just serious amateur golfers who are trying to get better with just resources to help them in their game. So more to come there for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
So in that case, I hope everybody enjoys this episode 22 with Justin Bardgett, the PGA Tour. Thanks, Joseph.
Thanks, Jim.
Justin Bardgett, welcome to the Driven Golf Podcast. How's it going?
Going great, Jim. I appreciate you having me, and looking forward to talking about some junior golf, college golf, and wherever this takes us.
I think you and I have a lot in common. We've got some Midwest roots. We've spent some time in Champaign, Illinois, both of us. So I want to get into all of that, like this whole golf journey that you've been on. Currently, the director of player relationships of PGA Tour Pathways. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, player relations. So the PGA Tour Pathways would be kind of 4 properties. So you've got Korn Ferry Tour, PGA Tour Americas, PGA Tour University, which we'll probably get into most here, and then PGA Tour Q School presented by Korn Ferry. So just everything that involves the players and our members and those 4 properties. I lead a small team that kind of handles it all.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think this is really important, I think, for our audience. We've got younger golfers, parents trying to navigate this junior golf landscape, all with these aspirations of likely most of them looking to play professionally down the road. And this landscape has been changing. The professional landscape has been changing, dramatically over these past couple of years. But I think what I've witnessed is strategically things are more intertwined and better intertwined than they've ever been. And I think that's been a very intentional thing. We can get into that in more detail. And I think I wanted to get more into your background because I think you're probably an example of somebody kind of come through the ranks and gone through a lot of what our listeners have gone through. So let's start, just with your golf journey, your background. How'd you get involved in golf?
Yeah, absolutely. So I say I was a typical kid in St. Louis, Missouri, who played a bunch of different sports. Sports were kind of what I ate, slept, dreamt, everything. So played a bunch of sports throughout grade school, high school. I was a little bit small for my size. So I think I wisely, after I think it was my second concussion in hockey, realized that, there might be some better paths for me to take. So I think I was probably sophomore, junior in high school, started focusing primarily on golf. Very fortunate, went through the recruiting process. After being on the other side, as we'll talk about when I got into coaching, I would say I was pretty unprepared for the college recruiting process. But fortunately, ended up getting a spot at the University of Colorado. So went there for 4.5 years, probably closer to 5. Got a degree in marketing. Played college golf there when we were in the Big 12, which I believe Colorado is now back into the Big 12 this year. So that's kind of been
Who knows?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And from there, it's kind of played college golf, had a great experience. Turned pro. Played, I joke with people, probably almost every mini tour state open that there is in the United States. Played 2 years on the PGA Tour Canada. Played 1 year in Latin America. Played one event on the Korn Ferry Tour, one event on the PGA Tour, and that was kind of my professional career. It was a lot of fun. I learned a ton. The life lessons obviously led me probably a little bit to where I am today. but ultimately met my wife, and then my journey took a little turn away from playing.
I did want to dive in a little bit deeper because I did actually look at your bio page at University of Colorado. One thing that jumped out at me, and I wanted to explore this a little bit because we focus a lot on golf development and just helping golfers get better. Your scoring average improved by almost 3 strokes between your junior year and senior year, and I have to imagine that wasn't just a random occurrence. So was there something intentional about, like, hey, something clicked, or you were intentional about the things that you wanted to improve on and it led to success in your senior year?
Yeah, no, that's a great catch. And if you went back to my freshman year and saw some of the scores I shot then, it was pretty remarkable. Even where I came from there, I believe I shot 88 in my second round in college golf. So all that to say, like I said, I was probably a little bit of an overconfident high school player who maybe just wasn't aware of what good golf is probably what I would say. I was very humbled in my first few years of college, and I was very fortunate. I had a great coach in Roy Edwards, but I also had teammates around me who, I mean, if you ask me, I would say they're the real difference maker in college golf. Your teammates, if you have a good group, a good culture, and the guys push you, I think that's how you see guys in these teams that just constantly improve throughout the year. So I was very fortunate. I had some older guys around me my junior year that I asked questions about everything. Derek Tolan, Pat Grady, both of them were All-Americans, top 50 players in college golf, and I just tried to do everything they did. A big part of that was working a lot harder. I would say that my scoring average was directly correlated to the amount of time I put in. It's a time-intensive sport, as I think we all know now. But no, a lot of it was working hard, being around the right people that pushed me to be competitive. And that was what ultimately got me in a spot that I was playing at a fairly high level. I had a chance to win a couple good events my senior year.
Yeah, and I think there's something that you maybe touched on is going from probably like a big fish in a small pond at the high school level, a bit of a wake-up call going into, a Big 12 school, a big D1 program, and just seeing like, I thought it was good, but these guys are better than you and they're also outworking you, and there's sort of a wake-up call, it sounds like you had there.
100%. And that's where, even when I still talk to younger players and they ask me advice on trying to find a college, I tell them the coach and your teammates they're kind of the 2 biggest things, especially if you look at today's world with a top 50 programs. They all have good facilities. They're all kind of cutting edge and in the performance kind of, I guess, technology, I'll call it. But just look at the teammates, look at your coaches, and it definitely they will help if they're good, hardworking, good friends. They'll push you to kind of your limit and force you to get better.
And then I guess based on that success you had senior year, was professional golf still on the radar, like when you were shooting in the 75, 76s, or was it the fact that you were able to break through and have some more success? You think, hey, I could give this a run for the money?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit on it. I got so much better in the course of probably 12 to 18 months that I think there's probably a little bit of naiveness that I had, that I didn't, again, know what the jump professional golf would be like. But I also was kind of just curious as to how much better I could get, and ultimately if I could have some success at the pro level. I would probably say now, looking back, I wouldn't have done it any differently. There's a few things I would have done slightly different, but the experiences I had are ultimately what kind of shaped me. It's what I learned so much about life, toughness, a lot of different aspects that helped me when I ultimately got into coaching. But I would tell you, I was nowhere near good enough. If I look back, and even as I look at some of these college guys who I'm fortunate to be around as they transition to pro golf, I mean, it's apples and oranges compared to where my golf game was when I thought I was going to make it on the PGA Tour, if we're just being brutally honest.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of college assistant coaches have been on the same path that you're on. They chase it. They come to this realization that either the time and the money, or, they've got started a family or whatever, that maybe coaching is something that they were more gifted towards doing it. Did you have sort of this light bulb go off that maybe needed to go to a different path?
Yeah, I did. I ultimately, as I was kind of winding down, I met my now wife, and I kind of thought there's probably some more stable ways to transition to the next portion of my life than chasing state opens, mini tour events. So I actually got into financial advising for about 9 or 10 months. And I think probably the most important thing that taught me was that probably wasn't my path. So I learned that very quickly. I have a lot of respect for those in that industry, but not probably my cup of tea. And then, I would say I always thought college coaching would be a fun job, is probably the best way to put it. I always had a ton of admiration, respect for my college coach. So ultimately, I knew it was something I kind of wanted to get into. So yeah, that's when I kind of pivoted into college coaching, and that kind of took me on the next step.
Was it West Point? Is that where your first coaching job was?
It was. So I coached at Missouri St. Louis, D2 school, helped out basically just volunteering for a semester because I was actually having a really hard time to get an assistant coaching position. I probably interviewed for 10 to 12 jobs, just kind of preliminarily, never made it any further. Fortunately, Troy Halterman, the head coach at UMSL, took me on, taught me a ton my sophomore year, my one semester I was there. And I was absolutely hooked. We took the team to the Division II national championship. I walked with one of our freshmen who I think not that I had anything to do with it, but I walked with him when he at regionals finished, I think 7th, his best college finish by far. It was just remarkable how you could kind of watch a team kind of build and do something that I don't think a lot of people thought even they themselves thought they could do at the beginning of the year. And I was absolutely hooked. I got fortunate to be hired to Army West Point, so United States Military Academy, for 1 year. Was there. Just what a remarkable place. I mean, just the experience being around the premier leaders in the premier leadership institution in the world was just unbelievable. I mean, I kind of pinch myself sometimes when I watch Army football games or hear something about West Point, just to know that I was there for a year. Great learning experience, crash course on leadership. So yeah, I was there for 1 year and then got a call from Mike Small and went through the gauntlet interviewing with him, and ended up in Champaign, which is where I believe our backgrounds start to tie together.
I did want to dive into this West Point thing because I think amongst all college programs, it has to be really unique. Did the culture of like the Army and West Point, did those elements filter into how the golf program was run as well? I would imagine it would, right?
100%. And golf was it was just a unique sport to be playing in a military academy when, like we mentioned earlier, the time intensive sport that it is, right? And these guys only had, in your typical school day, I guess, even though it was far from that for these guys, they only had about 2.5 to 3 hours that were dedicated to sport. And I tell people, if you were to look at the priorities of their day between their military obligations, their physical obligations, academics, I mean, golf was probably 4th at the highest on any of these guys' radar. And I would always tell them that when I was in college, it was golf number 1. I mean, it may have been, honestly, my social life was number 2, and academics was somewhere right in there as well. So yeah, no, an incredible place just to see the leadership skills. I tell people a lot one of the biggest things I learned at West Point was that it kind of redefined to me what a teammate is and teamwork. And it's not as much about really being best friends with your teammates. It's kind of more surrounding yourself with the people you trust and the people who can help you get the job done. And it's awesome when those two are hand in hand and they're the same person, but oftentimes the guys who were closest friends on the team weren't necessarily the best 2 players. And the way they would kind of push each other to get better, but at the same time, tell them the brutal, honest truth. And, they'd have to tell them, like, honestly, you're not at the level that we need you at to help our team. It was just a crash course on leadership and seeing how mature, how driven, how just incredible these, I guess, 18-year-olds to 22-year-olds were. I tell you, my wife and I always joke about, we felt a whole lot better about where we live and the future of our country when you spend some time there.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And then I think probably close parallels when you talk about standard of excellence, leadership, to then go work for Coach Mike Small, who's probably regarded as one of the best college golf coaches in the game today, or even ever, in terms of the success that he's been able to have at with our Fighting Illini. So what led to getting that job? Like, did you have an in there, or what led to that opportunity?
So the Midwestern ties help. There's a lot of people, I would say the Midwestern, especially Missouri and Illinois, the golf world's pretty small. So I was fortunate. I grew up with Scott Langley, knew Scott pretty well, but Zach Barlow was the former assistant at Illinois, and he left to go to be the head coach at University of Michigan. So as I got into coaching, Zach and I have been really close. We played junior golf together. I just gave him a call, and he was actually, I'll be honest, I was kind of trying to poke to see if he would hire me to be his assistant at Michigan. And he said, hey, I think you'd be perfect for this. He's like, you have to come in and interview. You're gonna have to go through the gauntlet. But I think like I'm going to put in a good word with Coach Small. And I was kind of eye-opening. I was like, this would be incredible. I remember telling Zach, I was like, I have 1 year of coaching experience. And he said, I know. He's like, that is what makes you perfect. And I was kind of, it was kind of my first crash course on how Coach Small thinks. But he told me that he kind of appreciated someone who was raw, somebody who didn't have to have as much knowledge and coaching, because he would help kind of bring me up to speed on that. And somebody who he was huge on somebody who wanted to learn. And I think he could tell right away that I'm crazy passionate about coaching, helping young players in golf. So I think he sensed that and was fortunate to relocate to Champaign.
Yeah. Did you ever go to Papa Del's Pizza?
Yes, we took quite a few recruits to Papa Del's, and the deep dish pizza there is still one of my favorites.
Yeah, we miss the deep dish and pizza in Texas. We haven't found a great place yet. So my wife started making it on her own, which is really good, actually. Oh. So you gotta let our listeners, let myself in. Is there something in the water in Champaign, Illinois? Like, what is the secret to Coach Small's success? Like 13 out of 15 Big Tens. I think they've been to match play more than any school since match play started. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, I used to know those stats you just rattled like the back of my hand. And now that I'm a little removed from it, I'm probably not as sharp as I once was. You know, it's funny, when I got out of coaching and into the role I'm in now, I had a couple assistant coaches who called me that I've become really close with. And they said the same thing. They're like, you gotta tell me, like, what is he doing there? What are you guys doing? I tell you, I don't believe there is any secret sauce. It is just every day. It's a environment, it's a culture, it's a place that he has built, that it's just a competitive accountability, 100% ownership machine. It's driven by him. That's no mistake. And that's not lost on anyone, but it's just the way he's wired. It's the way he lives his life. He competes and holds such a high standard in everything he does. I say it's just osmosis, right? It encapsulates everyone who he's around. And he's the type of guy, I go back to when I was talking to Zach Barlow and I was asking questions, and he's like, you're going to talk to him. He's not going to really raise his voice or say anything crazy, but by the end of the conversation, like, you'll run through a wall for the guy. And it's 100% true. I still talk to him probably every month or two, and we text more than that. I couldn't have more respect for someone than I do for him. But his knowledge of golf, his knowledge of just raw competitiveness, I haven't been that close to a lot of other coaches, and I have a ton of respect for a lot of the college golf coaches. It's just unmatched. And, I saw it from a different perspective this year at the national championship at La Costa. And it's just cool. He by no means was Illinois the most talented team there, but it was absolutely meticulous the way they picked apart a golf course. It was probably the best 4 days for a crash course on what Mike Small has done at Illinois. I mean, picked the golf course apart, built confidence, and ultimately just kind of rolled everybody, which was, I'm impartial now, but it was fun to see. And it's just who he is. It's just what he's built. He recruits guys who are like-minded, tough, championship qualities, and he just kind of molds them. He chips away at the little edges and helps them learn more about their golf game. And that's probably, if I give him one compliment above all else, it would be that he helps guys figure out their own golf games. He figure out their own tendencies. And I think that's why you see, as a team, they don't go into a lot of the lulls, and he's had so much success for so long, is because he helps them be self-aware of who they are as a person. And they're all different people, all have different backgrounds, all have different skill sets in golf, but he helps them realize who they are, what they need to do well to play at a high level. And just, I tell you, he gets everything he can out of them. And then you look at what they do in professional golf. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. It's astounding. The track record of all Americans and those have gone on to success has been really fantastic. And we'll get into the PGA Tour and you in a minute. But Adrian graduated and he won on the Korn Ferry, his first start, right? I believe.
Yes, yeah, won his first start and then lost the second one in a playoff. So, a great example as well. Him and Tommy Kuhl, I was fortunate to coach for 4 years, and talk about two different guys who are completely different people, completely different backgrounds, completely different golf games. I mean, Adrian's been a world-class player for, I don't call it 6, 7, 8 years, and Tommy Kuhl just consistently got better. But you look at what they did their senior year, and both ended up being first-team All-Americans. That just kind of shows you how Mike develops the guys who want to be good.
And one thing I wanted to circle back on is you mentioned sort of your journey and getting recruited University of Colorado, you said that in a lot of ways you weren't really prepared for what that was all about. And then having seen it on the other side now as an assistant coach, obviously, on the front lines recruiting and talking to kids, what's some advice that you would give to kids that are maybe, 14, 15, 16, or like starting to get into this, trying to get noticed and trying to communicate with coaches about, hey, check me out?
Yeah, I mean, I could write like a book, to be honest. But the biggest thing I would say is to just be open in your communication. I think it's a numbers game to some extent, right? So if you look at a place, I can speak to Illinois, but a smaller team roster where you're only recruiting 1 or 2 guys each year. Some programs maybe it's 3 or 4, but just kind of, I would say, be aware and just communicate with the coaches. And if you see a player commits there, and it was your dream school or the place you really wanted, I would just ask. I just kind of would be, I really appreciated when guys asked me, do you still have a spot for me? Are you interested? And I just thought it got clarity on both sides, or created more clarity on both sides, which I tried to be as open and honest as I could be in the process. And I asked the same from the juniors and their parents. So I would say just open communication, but then also I'd say really have an open mind. There are so many different sizes of schools. There are so many different locations of schools. There's so many different specialties as far as education. There's so many different styles of golf coaches, and trying to learn as much as you can about each of the different ones, especially when you talk about the different styles of coaches and team chemistry, team cultures, and knowing that, as you learn, there isn't a right or wrong. Different players will thrive under different systems, but just be open to, even if a place like, I'll say myself, I was gung ho on going to Arizona State, and like I said, a little bit that the unknown for me was how good those guys were. So I would just say, even though that was my dream school, I wish I would have been more curious about some other places. And ultimately, I ended up in a great spot at Colorado, but I wish I would have had more of an open mind, gone and tried to experience a few more places. My talent level too probably held me back a little bit. It's not like I had options from everywhere, but just really be open minded to the process. And just because it's a smaller D1 program doesn't mean that it might not be the right place for you. I mean, you look at over the course of the last 10, 20 years, there's a wide range of schools that have put guys on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. So when you got into coaching, were you thinking like, this is what I'm going to do? I'm going to be assistant coach. I'm going to move up the ranks and get a head coaching job? Because that didn't play out exactly probably how you imagined either, right?
No, not at all. So yeah, I would tell you, even if you were to take me back a year and a half and you asked me, after what would have been 3.5 years at Illinois, I think I probably would have still told you that I was going to be a head coach somewhere at some point. I was in a little bit of a unique situation. I'm a very loyal person, and I truly loved Illinois. So where I was going to go from there, I maybe was a little more selective than I probably had the liberty to be, would probably be a good way to put it. So some of the head coaching jobs that were coming open and I projected to come open, some weren't of a huge interest to me. My wife and I were really, we were happy in Champaign, but we were really focused on whatever our next move was kind of going to be a permanent place. Because I wanted to go somewhere and I wanted to build something. I wanted to be somewhere and be able to set down roots and stay somewhere for a while. So that's probably what my mindset was. And then as we kind of fast forward to where I ended up, I got a phone call from my now boss, Brendan Von Dorn, in February, actually, after he talked to, funny story, he talked to Mike Small and asked if he could talk to me. And Mike came to me and said, hey, the guy who started PGA Tour U wants to talk to you about a job. And I kind of said to Mike, like, yeah, no, I'm okay. Like, I'm just focused on what we're doing here. And then I'll get a head coaching job whenever it's right. And he's like, and Mike's very direct. He said, he goes, I'll just tell you this, Justin, if the PGA Tour calls and wants to offer you a job, he goes, you'd be crazy not to listen. So I did. We had a couple of phone calls. I was really intrigued. My wife and I knew nothing about Jacksonville, Florida. So we looked that up on a map, learned a little bit about the area. We came to interview in late February and it was 85 degrees. It was a little bit chillier in Champaign. And ultimately, that's how I kind of just went fast forward for you. But that's how I ended up in Jacksonville.
Well, that's fantastic. And I want to explore this because I think not a lot of people know what PGA Tour U is.
Yeah.
Even my friends who are avid golfers, like follow the tour closely. I was actually surprised because like I've had like a lens into this amateur junior golf space. So these names that are playing college golf right now, I've been tracking them for the last 3 or 4 years as they've gone through the ranks. So I'm tracking the PGA Tour U closely, but a lot of my close friends, they're watching the majors, they're watching the Masters, they're watching, a couple of the PGA Tour events, and these guys they just come on the scene and they don't know where they come from. And even one of my closest friends, when I mentioned PGA Tour U, he was like, well, what is that? And I was shocked. So can you give folks a little bit of background on just like this evolution of what the PGA Tour U is, like when it first started and what it is today?
Absolutely. So my boss, like I mentioned, Brendan Von Dorn, this is his brainchild that he kind of, cooked up, probably starting in, my guess is like 2016, 2017, 2018. He was working really hard on the concept, was navigating the back channels of the PGA Tour and trying to gain some momentum for this concept. I think he saw a opportunity when he compared, he'd spent some time at the MLS in a different capacity, but I think he saw a great opportunity when you look at how the best players from college golf were transitioning into professional golf. And really it was the Wild West is what we kind of call it now. It was kind of, hey, good job. Here's your diploma. Congrats on being a 3-time first All-American. Here's a handful of sponsor invites. If not, good luck at Q school against some very, very seasoned pros. Right. And so he kind of, I think, saw the concept of an NFL draft a draft in professional sports and was like, well, could we get closer to that in golf? He also was a former college golf coach, so he had a really strong knowledge of college golf and really understood how strong the players are at the highest level of college golf. So he came up with this system, which basically it rewards benefits and playing access to the top collegiate golfers in Division I. So ultimately, the PGA Tour University ranking, we can get as far in the weeds as you want or not, but I'll try to keep it a little bit high level. 2-year ranking. It's meant to be your final 2 years of college. So starting right after the national championship, your sophomore year, your ranking window, as we call it, would open. And it's a 2-year ranking window that culminates at the national championship your senior year. So during that window, what counts for your PGA Tour U ranking is all collegiate events and any PGA Tour event or major championship. And I think there is actually 1 or 2 DP World Tour events that count as well, do some partnerships. But it's your performance in those events are then weighted and you're given points off of WAGR, which is a whole nother deep dive we could go into that I'm probably not qualified to talk about. So we'll probably try and stay away from that one.
You don't want to get me on the WAGR soapbox. We'll do that offline.
Okay. So anyway, the points you earn, and then it creates your point average. And basically it evaluates your 2 years, and where you finish is where your entry point is to professional golf. Number 1 now is the evolution of benefits is directly to the PGA Tour. So you've got your Ludwig Aubert, and now you've got Michael Thorbjornsen, two pretty good number 1 guys to come out and kind of champion that direct access. And then 2 through 5 will get you what we call fully exempt status on the Korn Ferry Tour, which means starting with our BMW Championship, which is the first event in June, through the Korn Ferry Tour Championship, you have access to the full field events. Numbers 6 through 10 have conditional access. So the way they get in is kind of based off of how 2 through 5 play. Okay. And if they take a week off, it kind of goes down a man is the easiest way. Or the good example that you would get is Adrian last year, he won his first event. So he didn't play out of the PGA Tour U category. He played out of a tournament winner category, which then opened up another spot for a guy in the 6 through 10 category. And then
was that how Ricky got in? Ricky Castillo?
That is, yes. And then Ricky won, and Ricky moved the tournament winner category. So last year was a great year for access for PGA Tour U 2 through 10 because you had guys top 25 and you had guys moving up. And hopefully this class, it's kind of still getting their feet wet in pro golf. Greaser had a great week. Austin Greaser last tournament in Springfield, Illinois. So I think those guys are going to start catching their stride here. But then, as I mentioned, that was 2 through 10, and then 11 through 25 get access directly to the PGA Tour Americas. And there are some different Q school benefits that go with each of those tiers, but that's where we kind of I say that's where you slot yourself into pro golf. And then from there, I mean, it's the ultimate meritocracy of earning your way. And ultimately you have to earn your way to stay where you are as well. If Ludwig would have gone out and missed a lot of cuts, at some point his window expires as well. And he would then move to wherever level he has access.
Yeah, I mean, this is fantastic. And I think I mentioned at the outset how everything is like logically and strategically intertwined in a way that hadn't existed in the past. I mean, you're an example of where you talked about, not knowing what tournament you're going to play in next and, driving from one event to the next. And I think if you hear about the plight of professional golfers, it's not a glamorous life at all. And sometimes you hear on Twitter or whatever, people say this mantra, well, just play better. Well, I think just play better works if you have status, right? And I think you're allowing these players these opportunities. They've earned this opportunity to have status somewhere. And yes, if they play better, they're going to continue to move up the ranks, hopefully someday all the way to the PGA Tour, if not immediately, some point down the road. But that opportunity exists. And it is, like you said, like fight or flight. Like, it's just, you're going to shake out. Like the golf is going to expose you whether or not you have the talent and skill level to compete against the best in the world. You're going to shake out somewhere on that spectrum. And some people, they don't quite pan out, and that's okay. That's just the brutal nature of the game. But I think if you contrast that with how it existed, you mentioned a little bit in terms of the sponsors exemptions and, just not knowing where you're going to play next and doing the Monday qualifiers. That's a very, very difficult life for golfers that have world-class skill, but hadn't had an opportunity to play. And that still exists in some cases if you don't have status. But now I think there's this very logical pathway to the PGA Tour, which and these tours now kind of fit, and they've all fit together nice and neatly, which I think is which has been great. And I think I really see it as we can get into it, like it's a win. Like, it's a win for the tour. It's a win for the players. It's a win for the college coaches, because I think it creates an incentive for those players to stay the 4 years. And I would say as fans, if there's anything we've learned about golf in the past couple of years, that golf is much more compelling when the best players are all playing in the same event. So, some guy who might be the 160th best golfer in the world, but has no status, we've never heard of him. Those are the compelling stories when those guys are competing and have a chance to contend. It's maybe their first time they're contending on a bigger stage. Like, those are the guys that we root for. And I think about like Scotty Scheffler. Like, he didn't just all of a sudden be great. Like, he existed prior to PGA Tour U, and he had to grind his way through Korn Ferry Monday Qs, and thankfully he was good enough. He wasn't just like a superstar born overnight. Like, he had to go through all those ups and downs as well. So I think it's great what you guys are doing in terms of like building these logical pathways for players to really see how good they can be.
Yeah, no, I mean, you hit on a lot of different points there, but it's our pathways are meant to exist and to create an environment where players are able to freely move up and efficiently and effectively, right? And to allow free flow between the tours, ultimately with PGA Tour U and then PGA Tour Q School, both kind of providing an influx of players into those systems, a rejuvenation, if you will, each year. And it's kind of great that the more I've been in my position, the more you see the unique paths that guys have, but at least now they know there is a direct path, right? So you have a guy like Adrian who goes and does it probably the most direct way outside of being outside of the number one person who goes directly to the PGA Tour, but he wins his first event, finishes runner up in a playoff in the second, and he's got a PGA Tour card 3 weeks out of college, right? That's about as efficient as it gets. But there's other players. You look at like a Noah Goodwin who graduated from, I believe, SMU in 21 or 22, but played in PGA Tour Canada, which is now a part of PGA Tour Americas, moved up there to the Korn Ferry Tour. I think now he's in his second year on the Korn Ferry Tour, sitting in the top 30, in position to earn a PGA Tour card. So there's just ways you can stair step it up. You even look at the other, from Q School, you have a guy like Hayden Springer, who was number one in PGA Tour Canada, but is playing some good golf, gets the final stage of Q School and runs the table, finishes, I think, T3, and now he's on the PGA Tour. So
yeah, just shot 59.
Yes, it's exactly right.
Crazy.
So no, that's what the pathways are meant to do. They're meant to be an efficient and effective way to get the best players to the PGA Tour as fast as possible, because I think it's pretty compelling when you see these young guys contending in big time events.
I would say the other thing, which I didn't fully appreciate until more recently, is I think as a golf fan, the PGA Tour, like the standings, it really sort of frames like a narrative for the college golf season and the amateur golf season in terms of like tracking these players over this 2-year journey. Mm-hmm. So when you see an amateur, it's like, oh, he got a sponsorship exemption. Like Luke Clanton's a perfect example.
Yep.
Like I will instantly like star them on the PGA Tour app and track how their progress is going. Cause like, I just think it really, you guys are doing a great job promoting the successes that they have and how the growth and development is occurring. But I think as a golf fan, it's a little bit, I'm not a foodie, but it's a little bit of like knowing like the hot new restaurant in town, like before everyone else knows about it. Like I think Ludwig is a perfect example. Like he really busted on the scene at the Ryder Cup and obviously had this great success at the Masters. But I think of like our friend Tron Carter at No Lane Up. Like he was in like very, very early on Tron and like singing the gospel of Ludwig very, very early. And I would say like I was in that boat like telling my friends about this Ludwig guy is unbelievable. Like he might be the best driver of the golf ball ever, or, you know, even better than Rory. And it's great to be right. You know, you see him at the Ryder Cup having this success and winning on the PGA Tour. So I imagine you got to see this like week in and week out. Like these guys are just so good, and then you get to celebrate in their success and feel like you're a part of like providing this opportunity for them. It must be very rewarding.
It is 100%. And you said it very well there. And a guy like Luke Clanton, who in the last 3 weeks has obviously put himself in a great position for the class of 2026 with PGA Tour U. But when he made the start at the US Open, I mean, the people who are in the weeds on college golf, right? He was the top 2-3 college players all year. I think 3 or 4 wins, unbelievably strong finish to the season, nearly winning a national championship. So has what he did surprised me a little bit? I mean, yes, I would say I don't know that back-to-back top 10s by an amateur for the first time since 1958 was something I had seen on the bingo card for this summer, but it also doesn't surprise me because I also know the level of college golf. You look at Michael Thorbjornsen, T2 with him. It's just the college game is just elevated to such a high level, and it goes back to what we were talking about, right? You've got great college golf coaches, probably I think more so now than ever before in college golf. I mean, it is a booming industry, in my opinion. College athletics, maybe aside, that might be a different animal. But like you said too, you have guys who played who if they don't end up reaching their goal of being on the PGA Tour, making it professionally, they have the passion to coach and they want to coach. And you see, I even saw the other day, Derek Ernst is now the assistant coach at Oklahoma State. I mean, Chris Williams at Auburn, a former #1 amateur in the world. I mean, these guys are part of the boom of college golf, in my opinion, because they're spending time with these guys. They're passionate about it. These guys are getting great coaching. The technology now is so good. Facilities are so good. So all of this to kind of wrap up and say just college golf being in such a strong place is really the foundation of PGA Tour U. And it's great for me because we get to tell these stories, hopefully build these guys' brands a little younger than had been done in the past. And like you said, then just get to watch them continue to grow and play and develop as professionals.
Yeah, you probably saw this as coaching too, but I could share some information with you after our call because I've been actually tracking player progression of really the top like freshmen basically every year going back to like Jordan Spieth and JT.
Oh wow!
And I think the net message in all of that is these kids just keep getting better and better and better. And I think you touched on a little bit with the use of technology, with the use of TrackMan, with the use of just like optimizing their physical side and what workouts to do and getting earlier on that. And also just having opportunities of playing against, playing in top events, playing against amateurs and amateurs playing in professional events. Like really, if you had this lens and you had this perspective, none of this should be a surprise. It's just happening right in front of our eyes. And these kids are just getting better and better and better. So I think this is, it's a perfect segue because you have this PGA Tour Accelerated, which is for these special cases where guys are outliers. But it seems to be happening more and more. So I don't know like how that landscape has changed or how it was decided in terms of the criteria or if it's going to evolve. Maybe you could give some background on Accelerated because there's probably going to be 2 examples here, maybe back-to-back years, right?
Yeah. So absolutely. So we talked about PGA Tour University and the ranking system. So then another separate, I guess, vehicle, we'll call it, or property would be Accelerated. So the Gordon Sargent's our best example, right? He's the one who achieved it, is the only one to achieve it to this point. But it's a way to identify, we call them, I think, generational talent, which I think we might have to rethink that phrase with the way we're trending. Yeah. But just exceptional talent that are younger underclassmen. So before they're captured by PGA Tour U's ranking. The points metric, it's different, I guess, different amateur, collegiate, and world ranking achievements, and even professional starts. You earn points, right? And you need to get to 20 points. When you get to 20, you've unlocked a PGA Tour card, as Gordon Sargent did. Different ways you can go about doing it. Like Jackson Coyven, for example, freshman or rising sophomore at Auburn. I believe he is at 17 or 18. I haven't looked at the Wagger rankings today. So he's at 17 or 18, but he gobbled up almost all of those points in the past 2.5 months via winning college golf awards, making cuts, a couple team appearances. But it's just our way to try to capture the younger talent, and I guess the solve for it all is to identify them, but it's also to keep them from turning pro before they have a direct path or direct access. And so you look back at a Jordan Spieth, and I'm probably going to get the example wrong, but I just remember when he won at John Deere, everybody talked about how big of a deal it was because now he had membership. And even for the talent that Jordan Spieth is, it speaks to that it is not that easy to gain membership on the PGA Tour through 7 sponsor exemptions or however many it is that you're able to unlock. So it's really our way to kind of capture those guys, identify them. Gordon's a great example of the strength of college golf and what he believes college golf is as he's choosing to go back and finish his senior year. We were fortunate. He came down and visited us at the Global Home in Jacksonville, Ponte Vedra, and just talking to him, it was so eye-opening to hear how much better he felt like he gets each year in college golf. I think he felt like his game is really close, but he wanted to become more consistent. He wanted his off days his bad days to keep getting better so that he could compete week in and week out on the PGA Tour. And, you mentioned it, which is actually probably a decent segue into more of my current role, but it's a grind, right? It is not all glitz and glamour on the PGA Tour, the Korn Ferry Tour, PGA Tour Americas. At times it's a lonely place. At times you're not playing your best golf, and even for your 10 handicappers, playing bad golf is not always that much fun. So our role was to kind of educate guys on that. In player relations, we're trying to be a resource for players. We're kind of a conduit between the PGA Tour headquarters and the membership. Try to kind of make their lives as easy as we can outside the ropes so that they can focus a ton on playing. Part of my role in our team is helping the PGA Tour U guys to have that transition. It is some guys make the transition very quickly. Others, it takes a couple of years. You look at John Pak, world amateur number 1, comes out of college and probably, I don't think anybody saw him not having success right away, but stumbles a little bit, and you fast forward 3 years now. Yeah, 3 years, and he's on his way to earning the PGA Tour card. So everyone's journey is a little bit different. And from a player relations, with my background, it's unique because I feel like I can speak to a lot of the guys and I understand what they're going through. And especially the college golf background as well. I know what they're used to in college golf. I know you've a college coach who kind of does a lot of the things for you, and just being able to kind of help with that transition. I know I've kind of segued a little bit off of Accelerate, so we can go back to that if you want.
No, that's great. I did want to get into that because I think you're essentially trying to set up these kids and make it as seamless as possible for them to just play good golf, and the level of their golf will sort of self-identify, but you've made it as easy as possible. Because like you said, it can be lonely. You can get in this rut where you're sort of defining yourself by your scores or miscuts and, questioning, just how good you are, especially when you're playing against the best in the world. Yeah. So it's great to hear that you're supporting the kids as they're coming out of school and through that journey. I did want to talk about this a little bit, because I believe it has to be a balancing act, right? Because it isn't like you can just hand out PGA Tour cards like candy, right? So you have the old guard, which they don't want their job taken, they don't want their spots taken, right? So what is there a little bit of an uphill battle in terms of how these benefits have evolved and communicating with the with the current players around how this is all going to work?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say it's got to be, like I said, I've only been at the tour for a little over a year. So I would imagine that these conversations, when you go back to 2020, 2021, were probably even more difficult. I would say at this point, I think we've gone past, or we're working out of the validation stage. I think it's pretty conclusive that the best players in college golf can and do transition. Yeah, and they're ready. It can and do transition into the professional world just fine, and their talent level is certainly there. I think probably the balancing act that we're more in right now is, what is the right number to each of the access points, right? And what is the balance point? I mean, as much as, being a college golf fan, would I love to see 5 cards directly to the PGA Tour? Yeah, I think it'd be pretty interesting to see. At the same time, you got to balance that with there's a lot of guys who have been out there for a long time. I think it's also safe to say that you would not see all 5 guys each year retain their status. So, and there's something to the journey through the Korn Ferry Tour or through PGA Tour Americas that, it might toughen you up. It might teach you some lessons that you wouldn't have otherwise learned that maybe are beneficial. And I bet you a lot of guys that have gone through that path would point to those steps in their journey as being instrumental in their development. So I'll tell you, really, the conversations, discussions we have with players now is it's more what's the right blend, right? And how many guys to PGA Tour Americas, how many to the Korn Ferry Tour? I think that part, the conversations are much more focused in that area than they are as to whether or not college guys can hang. I think that part's been kind of established. Yeah. And I think some PGA Tour pros, even the first time I heard of PGA Tour U, I was a little skeptical, right? And I was like, is they really that good? And you kind of watch the transition, you watch as they've grown, watch where we are now 3 years into the program. And I think it's certainly that question's been answered. And now it's just for us, it's finding the right balance of where the access is.
Yeah. And just touching base on what you said about Gordon, I think, I don't know him, but like based on his decision, kind of reading in between the lines, this is a tremendous opportunity that he has in front of him. And I think the decision is a conscious one to maximize that opportunity, that whatever 16, 18 months of having that tour card and making the most of it, because it's kind of like the NBA rookie contract. It's like getting the next contract is the most important thing, like setting yourself up for longer term success. Like, yeah, getting in the NBA is fantastic. Like getting drafted is fantastic. But having a long career where you're a rotational player and a starter, potential all-star, there's parallels, I think, with the PGA Tour, getting the pathway in the tour, but then also like, keeping and contending for majors, being a top 30 player in the FedEx Cup and, the signature events and everything that comes along, with that. So I think it seems like he's taking it seriously. He's taking development seriously and wants to really, make a huge splash when the timing is right.
I think that's 100% fair. And that's a huge metric we look at from our team and the Pathways team is, when you have graduates from the Korn Ferry Tour to the PGA Tour, at what rate do they retain their status? That shows how well prepared they were, both in terms of their golf game, but on and off the course, and to handle the rigors and life on the PGA Tour. And it's the same for us, for PGA Tour U guys, wherever they get influxed, we look and see, did they retain their status? If not, we'll talk to a bunch of guys and say, what can we do better? What can we help with the transition? And the same with Americas into Korn Ferry Tour. And it's ultimately just about preparing for us. Identify, prepare, and transition is kind of the motto of the Pathways. And if we do our job and guys are prepared, they should have a pretty high retention rate.
What about communication with coaches and college players? Are you making the rounds around the country or going to tournaments? And because like I said, my friend wasn't aware of PGA Tour U, and I imagine college coaches are aware of it. Maybe they don't understand it fully, or there's misconceptions, or information is misconstrued. Are you having to sort through that?
A little bit. I would say we have a very much an open door policy, right? So I'm pretty open and pretty easily found. If people have questions, I encourage people to reach out. We have my boss, Brendan Von Dorn, and then another person who works for us, Libby Burrows, and she's 100% dedicated to more of the day-to-day operations of PGA Tour U. My role oversees a little bit more of the Pathways with a significant hand in PGA Tour U. But yes, she will be out at several events. I believe she and I are going to go visit 3 or 4 campuses this fall, simply trying to build a relationship with players, coaches. Just make sure that they do have questions, concerns, feedback, anything it might be. I mean, we don't believe we have a perfect system, so we are more than open to hearing people's thoughts. And there, some people have a lot more thoughts than others, I will say. But no, and so we'll be at tournaments. We have a pretty big presence. We're usually at the coaches convention. We're going to actually do, for the first time this year, for all D1 coaches that want to participate, we're going to set up a webinar, and we're going to run through the rules and regulations of PGA Tour U, talk about accelerated, give them a chance to ask questions, gather feedback. So yes, we do have a big presence at events, and we're trying to be as creative as we can to integrate more with college players, coaches. Libby will be at the US Junior. So we do our best to be available and to try to spread as much awareness as we can, because at the end of the day, there are a lot of complexities to PGA Tour U, but we just want everyone to kind of be on the same page with the rules and the benefits and spread as much awareness as we can.
Well, I think this is really important, and I'm glad that you've been able to fill us in, because I think even as a parent or a young player, or a parent as a young player, that are having conversations with coaches, like I'm in this time frame right now, actually, but you want a coach that understands the implications of PGA Tour U if this is where your son wants to get to someday, because I think it comes into decisions around scheduling. It comes into decisions around qualifying, who's playing, or whatever, this critical window. Because there's like an eligibility, right? You have to play in a certain number of events as a junior, right, to be PGA Tour U eligible.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, you have to play in 5 events your junior year, and then your minimum divisor for the 2 years is 18. So you have to meet those 2 criteria. The 5 in the first year, though, is like a basis for eligibility. If you don't meet that, there's kind of no way in. Okay.
And did I read somewhere that if you try to go to Korn Ferry Q school, or if you try to go to Q school, does that leave you out of
it? Does. Okay. Yes, and that's kind of, I think that stems a little bit from during the creation when you were kind of passing this through the PGA Tour's governance, is that they felt like that was a little bit of like double dipping. So you could be in really good PGA Tour U position, and then you're also going to go to Q school kind of to leverage it. So that's kind of where that rule comes from. The caveat or the exception is during your senior year, you can go to PGA Tour Americas Q school in the spring.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Like I said, information is power in the space, like wanting to know the landscape. Obviously, there's a huge incentive to stay in school. One thing I wanted to, maybe this is just an observation and maybe there's not a lot to it, but do you think PGA Tour U has led to more like transfer activity, either informed or maybe uninformed, thinking that kids maybe going to school because they're thinking maybe in their current situation they're not going to get to, maybe the WAGR points that they would need?
Yeah, that's a conversation that we have had a few times amongst our team. And if it has led at all to transferring, I do think it's a little bit misinformed. I will just use the Illinois example, and it's part of development of Mike Small's teams is he plays some events that are weaker scheduled, weaker fields. And you look at Adrian Dumont Dechessart, he never sat out. He never considered sitting out. He believed as part of his development was, I should be able to go to those fields and I should be able to be in the top 3, which would typically maintain his point average. I'll say he did not maintain his point average when he went to those smaller events. And I do actually use him as an example for some people when they say they have to transfer because of strength of schedule. And if you could go back and pull up his WAGR, you're going to see a couple point values that are really low. And I just try to encourage people, as this is kind of a roundabout way of getting to the transfer portion. It does work the way it's intended to work, right? And if you play good golf, it does not matter, in my opinion. I know there's probably some mathematics here that will prove me this not to be 100% accurate, but if you play good golf, it takes care of itself. And it seems like a simple way to say it, but I tell that to guys on the PGA Tour Americas. I tell guys on the Korn Ferry Tour, at Q School, good golf translates everywhere. And this system shows there isn't really faking it. I mean, look at Nick Gabrelsic. He's played at UNF. Not to say that they play a pretty strong schedule, but you can look back and you can find some programs that didn't have the strongest schedules that have produced players high in PGA Tour U ranking. And Adrian Dumont it's one that I tell people to go look at all the time, because there are some events in there that are very mediocre as far as strength of schedule, and it's good golf translates.
It's funny you say that, because I think the one thing that I observe amongst the best golfers in the world is they're very secure in their golf game, right? So I think these decisions, like you said, may be uninformed, but maybe at the root of it is a little bit of insecurity that they're not quite good enough. And I think, like you said, if you can play, you're gonna make it. Like, you just need that opportunity, and these pathways. And like you said, there's a bunch of different slots, right? So I think, if it's 2 or 5, or if you're 7 or 11, like it maybe doesn't matter so much, because I think if you're a good player, you're going to break through. Like, you're going to get there for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say the getting into this role, if you want to call it manipulating or gaming the system, it grows a little bit, I would say, as PGA Tour U's, just footprint grows, right? And as we grow through the different graduates and their success, it's human nature, I think, to try to figure out how to get an edge in a system. And it's meant at its core in PGA Tour U to exist 100% in the background of college golf. College golfers are meant to go to school, play really the only team concept of golf that you will play for the majority of your career, and to just enjoy it, get better, play some world-class tournaments, just learn from great coaches, develop. It's not meant to try to pick and choose your schedule. And it's as much especially with my background and loving team golf, that's what I try to just reaffirm to people is PGA Tour U is not the main goal or the main piece of college golf. It's becoming a very big one, but it's meant to exist completely in the background and just identify those 25 players based off of what they did just throughout the college golf season.
Yeah. And I would say this, like the other, I don't know if it's negative feedback or something I heard around the NCAAs this past spring, was that it was sort of already locked up, or there wasn't like this drama. And I think in some years there might be a ton of drama going into the NCAAs, and other years there might not, because somebody just deserved it that much, right? And I think probably what we're seeing with Luke Clanton is he's coming out of the gate strong, right? I mean, this is like where his first few events are going to be these very, very high earning PGA Tour events. He's going to have quite a lead whenever you guys first publish your list. I don't know, when do you guys first publish? So
for Luke's class, it would not be until basically end of July 2025. So we still have, he's just getting started in the class of 2025. I just want to make sure I get my years right here. The class 2025 the top 25 will be released by the end of this month. I think it's the 22nd or so.
Oh, okay.
So we're getting really close for that. I will say, just to touch on your not having drama, at the national championship, I would say that I don't know that it's intended to have drama. I think at its core, it's just meant to identify those 25 players and to slot them. I think it's more a body of work, I guess, is how I would phrase it, than trying to identify who's the hottest player at nationals. And I believe that at some point in the next few years, it's going to be really close at nationals, and it'll be plenty of drama.
Because there's a bonus, right, for that event.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes. So nationals has bonus. I believe it's 15 bonus points for your senior year if you were to win, and then it's incrementally down through the top 10, I believe. So a win at nationals is massive. It ends up being about 40 points.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, this has been fantastic, and I would just encourage folks, like, get educated on it. I think if you just search PGA Tour University, you can find the current standings. You can find more information. I think you guys do a great job of just marketing these new stars. I think the Instagram handle is PGA Tour U, quite simply. But anytime these guys have success, or you saw when these guys first got their card and it's their first pro event, it's a little bit like learn about them, learn about their background, meet their parents, like that. Just fun stuff. But I think this humanizing these players, that some of them are going to go on to win majors, right? They're going to go on to be superstars. And like I said, be the cool kids that got in early, and tell your friends, like, hey, I was in early on Thorburn. I've been telling you about this guy for years. I've been tracking his progress through amateur golf and through the college golf game. And like I said, each year there's this narrative with the standings. Look at it week to week and see how it goes up and down, and how these performances in these college events, it changes quite a bit, I think, from the first time you publish it to the end of the year, based on how those players are playing. And I think, like I said, it weaves this story of the college season that allows you to follow the amateur game more closely. It's really cool.
No, I agree. And it's been remarkable since I started the PGA Tour to see, when you just talk about the communications, content, media side, and to see how much they've all leaned into PGA Tour U, the remarkable resources, time, talents that they have, and to see it, to your point, to kind of bring to life college golf and some of these individual characters, brands, however you want to, player profiles, I just think has been one of the coolest parts to see develop over the last few years.
And I would say one thing, I would just have to make an observation. We talked about your journey in the game, and I could just see how you've been shaped by these leaders and these coaches and just your experiences. And to me, it looks like you're in the perfect position because you're able to bring all of that experience, all of those takeaways, playing on these different tours, like you said, basically every mini tour, knowing what the ups and downs are and be able to relate to these players. They probably don't know how good they have it relative to what you have, but maybe you do a good job of reminding them.
No, I appreciate that, Jim. I've been very fortunate. I've been surrounded by awesome people. I was in coaching. I mean, obviously being around Mike Small, now even the people I work with the PGA Tour, I am beyond blessed. My wife kind of jokes with me that I kind of have everybody's dream job now. So I've been unbelievably lucky, and it's been awesome just interacting with people like you and people who care about junior golf, college golf, and it's a great environment, culture, family, however you want to say it. So no, I'm the one who's extremely lucky. So
yeah, well, we're lucky to have you, and I really appreciate the time, Justin, and we look forward to crossing paths sometime in the near future.
Sounds great. Thanks again, Jim. I appreciate you having me.
Andrew Lewis, welcome back to the Angle of Attack with Andrew Lewis. It's been a while. How's it going?
Good. Everything's good. Glad to be back. It has been too long. There's been a lot going on.
Yeah, we're starting up volume 3, continuing our series, kind of whittling these scores down over time. We're going to start this next section, which is like getting from 74 to 72. I did want to take a slight detour, but I think it's still related to this category. A lot of golfers in this category, we're going to be dropping this the Tuesday before the U.S. Junior at Oakland Hills. And I have to imagine there are quite a few golfers in this category that are competing in the U.S. Junior next week. So all the best to our listeners who are competing in that. I know you've got a couple clients that will be up there as well. Mm-hmm. But I think this is probably where the bulk of, I would say, elite junior golfers sort of sit in the 74 to 72 category. So hopefully this series really speaks to a lot of folks. But let's focus on match play, because in junior golf, there's not really a lot of match play tournaments. Maybe some end of the year stuff, some team events, here and there. But a lot of junior golfers don't have a lot of experience in match play. And we talked about qualifier mindset a few episodes back. I was wondering, is there really a match play mindset? I have some thoughts on that, but I just wanted to get your take on it, because there might be misconceptions around people thinking this is what match play is like, or like setting themselves up for match play, when to be aggressive, when to be conservative, maybe being too aggressive or too conservative. I think there's a lot that can be learned there. And I think in a lot of ways, it's really only learned through the hard lessons of like losing match play matches, or kind of giving matches away, or just like the vagaries of match play. The experience goes a long way. But given the fact that these juniors maybe likely don't have a lot of experience, like how do we help them get well prepared for match play?
Yeah, I've actually played quite a bit of match play. I played some in college, and then every year the North Texas PGA hosts a match play event for the kind of the best players in the section. So I've done it quite a few times. What I've learned over the years is that the less that I treat it any different than a stroke play event, the better I play. I think too many people try to go into it with like a much, much different mindset and try to kind of feed off like what the other person's doing, to where they're either playing too much offense or too much defense, to where they basically never play their game. So I would advise most people to basically play it the same as match play. What the person that you're playing is basically irrelevant. until there is some momentum established to where you're like 3 or 4 or 5 rolling. And that's where I think there is like a mindset shift of like you're trying to slam the door shut. Like you're trying to Stephen Ames, Tiger Woods, this thing. It needs to be over. But, you know, like if golf was that easy, where you're like, oh, the guy just stuffed it, time for me to stuff it, then why don't you just stuff it every hole? Like that's not the way golf works. Just because the guy you're playing stuffs on hole 1, I mean, the likelihood that you're going to do the same thing is low. And if you start changing your game plan and you have an 8-iron in hand and you aim right at the flag, your dispersion shows up and you miss it short-sided, you make bogey, he ends up 2-putting. Like it kind of becomes this, you know, snowball where you're like, oh, I just should have hit my normal shot. I shouldn't have focused on what he did. And I think people would play a lot better in these situations. I don't know what your thoughts are, if that's similar, if you've experienced that.
Well, yeah, I've actually had the pleasure of witnessing some just epic match play matches that my son was in the last year, and just like I said, the learning lessons from that. I would say in general, I think we're in agreement on this. There is one like fatal flaw that people fall into this trap all the time on a match play, is I need to make a birdie because say your opponent has a birdie look. And maybe you're 20, 25 feet away and you're thinking, okay, I have to get this to the hole. And then they end up just like slamming it 4 or 5 feet past, and then they miss it coming back, and the other guy doesn't make the birdie anyway. So like this expectation that this guy he's in a certain position where you feel like you have to make it, and then you end up putting yourself in a position where actually losing the hole when maybe he left the door open for you and you weren't able to capitalize on that. Yeah, if the guy stuffs it into 2 feet and you're going to give it to him, then obviously you know what you need to do.
Right.
But I think even in
100%.
that case, I do see people like, oh, I'm going to take all the break out of it and I'm going to slam it. Like you think about a putt has an optimal speed in order for it to enter the hole. You don't want to be like twice that speed,
Yeah.
right? So a putt that maybe takes a breakout but is going to go 4 or 5 feet past is not optimal holding speed. Yes, you want to get it to the hole, but maybe it's just slightly longer or faster than you normally would, just to make sure it gets there.
Yeah, I would say like if I was like writing some affirmations or something before a match play, I would say never give the other person a hole. Meaning like don't have a 15-footer that I hit 5 feet. And let's say he has a 4-footer and then I missed the 5-footer. I literally just gave him the hole. Like you need to make them earn every shot. You see the same thing on chipping. Like someone will have a 10 or 15-footer and you're just off the green and you're like, oh, I have to make this. And then they'll chip it to 6 feet. The guy misses the putt and then you have a 6-footer versus you don't have that same mindset necessarily when you're playing like just stroke play. You're probably just thinking I need to hit this close. If it goes in, great. So I think people generally get in trouble because they don't ever really play like that. I see it even when the kids go out and play like money games or little matches. Like they play so much different. And I would say not that aggressive is the right word. They just don't play anything like how they normally play. They're hitting driver in places they wouldn't. They're aiming at flags that they wouldn't. And if you just kind of par people to death, usually that's going to be good enough to win matches.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that because I experienced that as well. And I think, especially if you lose a close match, you will look back at that round because really like you have these like key swing moments where it's not just like one stroke in a tournament. It's really changing 2 holes. Like it completely changes the complexion of the match more than just one, just one stroke. And you will look back at that round and there may be 8 to 10 different things. If one of those things just went a different way, the outcome of that match would have been completely different. So that's really interesting that you get this match play experience and just like that observation and experience and hopefully building and learning into the next time. It really comes down to these very, very fine things. Like you said, not giving a hole away, or when the opponent leaves the door open for you, you're able to seize that opportunity as opposed to not blowing it. The other thing I wanted to get your take on, you mentioned a little bit in terms of keeping your foot on the pedal. The one interesting thing about match play, and you see this in the Ryder Cup, even if you've never played match play, the difference between 1 up and 2 up is astronomical, and the difference between 2 up and 3 up is astronomical as well. Like these kind of stair steps are huge. So you even think about if you're 3 up in a match and it goes to 2 and it goes back down to 2 up, you're thinking, oh no, this could quickly get away from you. So I do think this keep your foot on the pedal 3 up to 4 up. I think once you get up to like 5 up, you're probably more than likely going to win that match, but you still want to keep the pressure on. The longer you leave that match going, the more craziness that can happen. And crazy stuff just happens in match play, right? Guy holds out a shot, or, you lip out a 3-footer or whatever the case may be. Just try to end the match as soon as possible. And I do think that you talk about people sort of changing their strategy. What I see is golfers that get up maybe 2 or 3 up, and then they sort of change their strategy a little too early. And the thing that got them there isn't the thing that helps them. They're not riding that all the way to victory.
It just makes me think of the Patriots and Falcons game.
Yeah.
And honestly, and they would even say, like, we totally went on defense. Like, we no longer tried to win the game. We're just trying to protect this lead. I would say it's very similar when someone is 3 or 4 up. You can just see that there is like this total, I'm just trying to like not blow it. I'm trying to not, lose this hole, versus the guy that's down that same amount. And there is like an element of like, well, there's nothing to lose now. And they start getting aggressive. Now, sometimes that they will get so aggressive that it just leads to them getting further and further down. Because obviously if they're down 3 or 4, they're probably not playing fantastic. So if they start trying to hit 6 irons and flags, they're probably going to hit some bad shots. So again, as much as you can, and I would say in both of those situations, like if you're 3 down, you're not going to make that up in 1 hole. You can go make an eagle. You're just going to be only down 2 now. So I think it just match play probably takes the most discipline of any of the ways of playing, any of the formats, because it's the only one where you can literally basically see your opponent, and where you have to just try to focus on your own game as much as you can, which just is very, very difficult. I mean, you see on the PGA Tour where it turns into like match play situations coming down the stretch. It's not totally the same, just because like a double is much more, hurtful than, if you double it in match play. But you always hear those guys say the same thing. Like, I was just trying to stick to my game plan. Maybe on 18, it starts to, think about it a little bit, but it just, in my perspective, it just rarely helps to be trying to force something.
One last thing I wanted to get your perspective on with respect to match play. You hear the term something along the lines of, oh, you don't want to play this guy in match play, or he's the type of guy that you don't want to play in match play. If we talk about like skill set, what are the skill sets and traits of that guy that just will wear you out in match play and that you don't want to face? It's all
stuff that you don't really see on the lesson tee. It's on the driving range. It's gritty, very good putter, very good short game, and very good at escaping. It's not the guy that hits it really far or hits it really good. It's honestly like Jordan. Like, no one wants to play Jordan because you feel like he's going to make par from everywhere. And so it's just going to be hard to like win holes because he's just not going to give you any holes. And you see those guys, you can see them very, very clearly, like who they are. So yeah, I think I'm kind of that way. I don't think very many people want to, not because I'm good like tee to green, but just I kind of get up and down most of the time. And it's just very frustrating. Like, it's very frustrating. Like, I would say my son is very much that way. Like, he will just wear you out. It's kind of, you think you're going to win the hole, and then all of a sudden they chip in or, flop it to 3 feet out of nowhere.
Well, I think that there's a reason why this tends to work out for people like this, is because if somebody misses a green and say you're hitting next, you think you have this advantage. You likely don't have to be quite as aggressive. So maybe you're shading more towards the middle of the green, putting the pressure on your opponent to get up and down. But if they just keep getting up and down, then you're getting more and more frustrated. It's like, well, maybe I should try to hit it closer to the green because I know this guy's going to go up and down. And then all of a sudden you make a mistake.
You start
right?
making, yeah.
So it's, it can be really like, try to be that guy. So people that are listening, in terms of the skill set, like the variety of the short game and lag putting, I think if you're putting everything to stone dead, like every lag putt, that is a very valuable skill in match play.
I think I don't want to underestimate too, like the grittiness of somebody. I think there's certain people that just have like this, like inner, like dog inside of them they're just not going to give you an inch, and they're very, very frustrating. A lot of people probably don't like them, like when they're playing, but they just have like this fire that's very, very difficult to play against. And you can spot that versus the kid that's kind of whiny and, like I wouldn't be worried about that guy.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, like in the matches that I've seen, I've seen some great matches. It is like when you have two like bulldogs battling each other and really elevating each other to higher and higher. It's like just kind of trading shots back and forth. And that's really cool to see. Like you see that in the Ryder Cup, and it's super exciting to see a great shot matched by another great shot. And match play is just the best. I hope that kids are seeking out opportunities to do that, to really gain the experience. I know maybe quite a few state AMs have a match play portion, like try to qualify for the state AM, get that match play experience. It may lead into, being that much better prepared for when you make a U.S. Junior and you get to the U.S. Junior.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Anyways, I thought it was a timely topic to discuss, and really appreciate your insights, and best of luck to folks that are competing at Oakland Hills. The Driven Golf Podcast is produced by Joseph K. If you like this episode, like it, subscribe, pass it on to a friend who might be interested. It really helps us out a lot. We'll be back in a couple weeks with the next episode. Until then, remember, in this great game, the journey is the gift. Enjoy the journey.
Yo, Green Street Posse in the house. This is the Papa Dale's remix. Yo, it's Jimmy C, D-O-double-G on the golf course from the Lou to Champaign. We stay on course, Justin Bardgett in the mix, Midwest pride. Korn Ferry dreams, PGA Tour by his side. Started small, now we rolling with the big crew. West Point to Illinois, homie paying dues. Pro pathways clear, we still with no fear. Many tours to majors, the future's here. Education on lock, scholarships in sight. From Mizzou, St. Lou to the tour we take flight. Mike Smalls got the crew, Big Ten rings, pouring champagne, running things. Man, it's insane. From the greens to the dreams, we keep it elevated. Pathways through the game, skills celebrated. From junior to the pros, goals never faded. Keep our foot on the gas, we stay accelerated. Yo, from the Latin to Manhattan, we accelerate. We be steady climbing, grind, never take a break. From West Point, discipline to Champaign streets. Big dreams, big moves, where the champions meet. Started from the bottom, now we elevate the stakes. Korn Ferry pathways, no room for mistakes. Pressure on the rise, but we never hesitate. With every swing, every shot, we dominate. Strategic with the strokes, calculated with the moves. Competitive drive, never lose, always improve. Many tours to majors, grinding every day. Justin Bardgett in the house, we don't play. From the greens to the dreams, we keep it elevated. Pathways through the game, skills celebrated. From junior to the pros, goals never faded. Keep our foot on the gas, we stay accelerated. Keep our foot on the gas, we stay accelerated. Keep our foot on the gas, we stay accelerated.